Mary Lahammer here with a preview of Almanac at the Capitol, coming to you live from the House Gallery. This is where we broadcast every Wednesday night through the legislative session. The beautiful House chambers. We've got our stools in place for our guests. Our guest tonight, topic of public safety. And I'm kind of billing it as a thoughtful conversation. And this all started when I was watching Public Safety Committee last week, and law enforcement officer. I think actually the current legislature is composed with perhaps more first responders than I've seen in probably a good 20, 30 years here. We have a lot of different, not just law enforcement, but a lot of different people, first responders. And so the co-chair model, because the House is tied, we have co-chairs. So tonight we have the co-chairs from Public Safety Committee. And again, Chair Novotny is law enforcement. And I was listening really closely, and he said quietly, because he's kind of a quiet, subtle guy. And he said, when the issue of immigration and ICE action in Minnesota came up, he said, he kind of admitted he didn't think everything was done perfectly, but he said, what we did was we talked about it quietly behind the scenes. He said, those of us when we saw things, we talked about it quietly. And that made me think, yeah, I know a lot of people in law enforcement that I talked to who said, yeah, we weren't publicly out there, out front, really saying a lot, but we were discussing and dealing with things behind the scenes. I've talked to several people who are in law enforcement and the legislature who have affirmed that as well. And also some of my sources in law enforcement saying that. Now, of course, there was a big public press conference here at the state capitol when there were police chiefs, sheriffs who came out and said that they were having officers, particularly officers of color, who were being pulled over and questioned by ICE officers. And they brought that to the forefront. But tonight we're going to be talking about this Public Safety Committee with co-chair, also the Democrat, Chair Moeller. And this week, that committee showed some bipartisanship, and they passed a bill out dealing with guns. Yes, a bipartisan bill dealing with guns. And you'll see that tonight on the show, and we'll talk about it as well. And this was an issue that two women in the committee from opposite sides of the aisle, a Democrat and a Republican, worked on. And this was dealing with domestic abusers and the fact that they would have to turn over their weapons. This is something a Democrat and a Republican could agree on, and could agree on guns. So I think we're going to try and have really deep, thoughtful conversation, and maybe some things that Democrats and Republicans can agree on, perhaps. And we also are allowed to, talk about differences, but try and have a substantive conversation tonight on the issue of immigration. Minnesota's still talking about immigration action. We still have some ICE here, and then also talk about gun control after the Annunciation school shooting. That issue's in the forefront. And also, some of the mental health measures are talked about. The governor has a very large gun control package, but doubtful, again, because you can't get anything passed here in the State House of Representatives with everything kind of dying on a tie vote. So to get things through, it has to have bipartisan majorities. So probably more school safety measures. We'll talk about that. And then also, we've been honoring retiring lawmakers. And tonight is Mr. No Shenanigans. He was part of what was called the No Shenanigans handshake deal, again, involving Democrats and Republicans working together. Longtime lawmaker Paul Torkelson, one of the few farmers left in this legislature, and really probably one of the best liked lawmakers. Little secret, I don't know if he'll agree or he'll admit to it, but he doesn't have a lot of enemies. He has a lot of friends. Paul Torkelson has been bonding chair. Always the guy or gal who's got the bonding bill has to make friends, because you have to build a bipartisan supermajority. So he's had that bill in the past. Now he has Ways and Means. The nickname sometimes for Ways and Means was Ways to be Mean, but he's not a mean guy. People like Paul Torkelson. In fact, a while back, I was talking to former leaders, Sertich and Seifert, Democrat, Republican, majority and minority leaders here, and they said their fear of the two retiring lawmakers who have had the biggest impact and could harm the place most by leaving, Senator Ann Rest, Democrat we had on a few weeks ago, and tonight's guest, Republican Representative Paul Torkelson, because the two of them are deal makers. They're very experienced. They have some shades of moderation. They know how to get things done. So it'll be really interesting talking to retiring Representative Torkelson tonight. And then the other thing we want to tease out, looking down at the speaker's dais down there, House Speaker Lisa Dameth. I chatted with her today in preparation for Torkelson's interview because I know the two of them are close friends and allies. And I do know that she selected him on her leadership team when she took over. She wasn't a particularly experienced lawmaker, hadn't been here for many terms or many years, like a lot of people when they rise up into leadership. And she pointed out to me that she chose him. It was not an elected position for him on leadership. That was the position she chose. She wanted him at his side. And he had said to me right away when she was elected and was kind of an unknown, and he said, keep an eye on her. She's going places. And now she's a leading candidate for governor and became House Speaker. And worked out a deal where former House Speaker Melissa Fortman stepped down and gave up her gavel in this power sharing agreement and really mentored Lisa Damus. And the loss of Portman's been really hard across the aisle for a lot of people, but really hard for Speaker Damus. And it's been an emotional year for a lot of folks. And it's going to be really interesting to hear the observations on a long career, almost 20 years here in the legislature, from Paul Torkelson, who will have a lot of observations, passed a lot of bills, seen a lot of things go down, cut a lot of deals behind closed doors, and like I say, made more friends and enemies. I don't know how many lawmakers that's true for, and really likes good government too. He's not one of the, break the place and blow the place apart or think compromise is bad. There was kind of a rush of Republican Tea Party folks who were in that camp. That was never Paul Torkelson. He's a Republican who thought government could do good things and could do good in the world and has always worked really hard on that. So it'll be interesting talking about kind of the brand of a rural Republican that he was and wanted to do good for people and do good work. And I think he'll definitely be missed around here and provides a lot of perspective and a lot of character and has been a lot of fun to work covering over the years because he was just always a really nice guy. And so it'll be fun to look back over the years with this retiring representative and then again, public safety co-chairs, Novotny and Mueller, talking tonight about some tough issues and hopefully a good, thoughtful conversation on things like immigration and gun control and school safety. That's tonight, Almanac at the Capitol. Live in the House Gallery, 7 p.m. on the statewide Minnesota channel, also streaming on tpt.org, and then 10 p.m. on TPT. And then we will archive this conversation here on Substack and Friday Night Almanac again. And then look for me on all of your social media platforms. I will be on Blue Sky and the new podcast, which is on YouTube and Spotify, Apple, Spin Sisters, which we made news for last week on Almanac, featured that as well. So tune in. We'll see you on Almanac at the Capitol. Thanks for watching.